So happy Sunday, and we are here for our very first podcast. It's not funny. And I have, as I've mentioned, I have my daughter Diana, who I'm going to interview first, and you're probably wondering, why am I doing her first, or at all? It's all the ways that she's a great interviewee.
So I get jobs? Okay.
I know her. I know she used to keep meticulous journal notes all the time. She may still do that. She can tell you herself. She grew up in the church. I mean, she exited the womb and boom, there she was in the group. She had no choice. She was a youngster when we were in Bible school as a family. When we left for Pittsburgh to start a church there, she was with us. When we came back and I finished my schooling, she was with us. She's also has a unique perspective because she is just a few years older than Kekel's son, so she can give that perspective on what it was like to grow up among, peers of his and hers. She was there when we moved on campus in Graham and was exposed to different things there, including like a grooming or a pre-grooming by some of the leaders' wives. She went with us when we went to Virginia to take over for the Dorseys in 2005, and she was with us when we left the organization on January 1st, 2006, which was, she can tell you about that, what that was like for her, and losing all of her friends. And so, a little background, back in May, we were talking about church stuff, and she mentioned to me something that was said in basic training when she was there. And she had also mentioned a Facebook group called The Lost Kids of NTCC, and that Kekel had preached about it or mentioned it in a service from that time. That got me going back to look to see, wow, it was like a brave new world. They're live streaming, and he's talking about this stuff. And so I'm going to hand it over to Diana now. Why don't you want to start with what happened when you were in basic training?
Yeah, I mean, basically it was, about 7.5 years ago now.
And what's your rank now? What are you?
E5.
Okay.
But I'm National Guard, so things move kind of slow.
Right.
When you go to basic, in the beginning, you have to do a lot of stupid in-processing stuff. Standing in line to get shots, standing in line to get shoes, standing in line to get this. Go to these briefs, which everyone has to have annually anyway, but they want to cram it all into like 2 days. So I hadn't really been there but a couple weeks, if that. I was 26. I'm sitting there in these briefs like...
Is that how old you were when you went in?
I turned 26 like 3 weeks after I got there.
I was 25 when I went in. I forgot that.
Yeah, enlisted at 25, but...
Okay.
Went to basic at 26. But no, I'm sitting there, I'm exhausted. I'm feeling too old. I'm realizing my back wasn't ready for this. Kind of just going, what did I get myself into? And just one brief after another, sexual assault stuff, money handling, all the things that these kids needed to know. And I'm just like, can we get to something good? Because I'm dying here. Like, I'm falling asleep. And the way, I kept getting yelled at by the drill sergeant because I kept dozing off sitting in the chair. You're supposed to stand up.
I can see that.
But I go to sleep without knowing it. So. We had this one drill sergeant come up, and he was like, okay, now we're going to talk about extremist groups. And I was like, okay, this is a little more interesting. And he started asking people different kinds of extremist groups that they could think of. And, you got the usual, like, KKK, Nazis, different things like that. I was like, oh my God, okay. And then he goes, well, what about a different kind of extremist group? He's like, let's think outside the box. He's like, what if I told y'all that a church can be extremist?
Is there a reason why? What was the reason for the extremist group talk?
You have to know that as a soldier, you cannot legally participate in things like riots or getting involved with things like that.
Gotcha.
Like, they got to tell people you can't do this.
And to
it doesn't represent
make them aware it's not always in your face.
You don't have an opinion anymore.
Yes.
Your politics, your personal opinions, that's not what it is. It's the army, so stay away.
Right.
And so I was just sitting there like, oh, well, yeah, that's true. He goes, I want to tell y'all a story. And he's the first one that didn't read off the PowerPoints.
Right.
Which was killing me. He's like, I want to tell y'all a story. When I was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, I think he was some form of sergeant because he had soldiers below him. He's like, there was this church in the area. And I literally just like, it's like caffeine hit me. I was like, no. There's no way.
You sat at attention, right?
No, I didn't sit at attention. I just sat up. I was like, there's no way he's going there. Absolutely no way. He's like, and they had a Bible school up there. And it was non-accredited. So it was kind of just their own thing. He said, I had a lot of soldiers that all of a sudden were going there. And the next thing you knew, they were being pulled away from base and actually living there. He's like, it caused a lot of problems.
Did he give you a time frame for this at all? Like, was this the 90s or you don't know? Okay.
It couldn't have been that much longer
It
before.
had to have been that or later, right? Because of when they started there.
Well, I mean, when someone's active duty and they were the rank he was when I was in basic,
right?
And the way he was talking, he could have only been like a rank or two below. And, drill sergeants, they're not there forever.
Right, that's true.
So they probably just pulled him from there and
right.
brought him to my class. I don't know. And how they would take these soldiers and try to get them into their Bible school, and we're constantly having them there. He's like, I don't care if you want to go to church. I don't care if you believe in God. But it was taking away so much from their work and away from... He noticed a lot of them were being taken away from their families. You just do the normal thing. You see your soldiers like, hey man, how's your family? Oh, I haven't really talked to them.
Oh, you mean like extended family, not like a husband or wife or something. Because a lot of these were...
Because they were just single.
Okay, right.
So he said he was very concerned, and the fact that he started having a lot of these soldiers being broke.
Money-wise.
Right. Their money was...
Not in half.
I mean...
Dun-dun-dun.
Could have been mentally broke. I don't know.
That's a grandma joke.
So he went to a couple of the services, and he was like, their views, you can pick out a few things that, yes, this is in the Bible, but it was on the extreme of church. And he's like, I want y'all to... What did he say next? Oh, he said, I want y'all to be aware of things like this. And he's like, now this church, they were called New Testament Christian Church. I about picked up my chair, folded it up, and threw it across the room at him just to let him know I was there. Like, I literally was like, yeah! To the point where
Did you want to, like, raise your hand? I know them!
Yeah.
I know them!
So, the way I was acting, like, I was getting real, like, you know how I get real fidgety? Mm-hmm. And my one drill sergeant came over, and he's like, Belfry, sit down. What are you doing? And I just wanted to tell him. I looked at him like, I know what he's talking about. Can I add to this, please? Like, God, this might be the only opportunity he gets to have someone add to this class.
Right.
But they wouldn't have let me. There was no way. I was an E1.
Right.
I didn't care. So, once he mentioned the church, I was like, I'm talking to him. He's not my drill sergeant, but I don't care. I'm talking to him.
And that is pretty bold in basic training, even, back in the day when I was in the Air Force, which is not anything like the Army, but, basic training wise, but to approach
A drill sergeant that
just
isn't
to
yours.
approach him, right? That isn't yours.
The whole other platoon.
Right.
So he just literally laid it out there as a warning, like, be wary of people that try to take you away from everything, try to take your money, get you into doing something. And he's like, some of you may not think it, but churches can be that way.
Yes.
And so after all of our briefs were done, I couldn't tell you what happened after that because my brain was just... And when we left, I grabbed this chick who was 17, and I was like, you're coming with me. That's because we had to have battle buddy.
Oh, right.
And she's like, where are we going? I was like, we're going to talk to that drill sergeant over there. She's like, we can't do that. He's not in our platoon. I was like, I don't care. I will take whatever punishment I have to do.
And you're going to do it with me.
And I ran up to him, and my mistake was there were people around him, and I was like crowded around him, like kind of excited.
Like a fan.
And he started to turn away, and I grabbed his arm.
You did not. You grabbed his arm? You didn't tell me this part.
I was how old? You're so used to doing certain things that it just happened.
I'm surprised you didn't put you in the pokey.
No, the moment he turned around, he said, I was like, Drill Sergeant, I'm so sorry. I just realized what I did. But I need to tell you, the church you warned about, I was like, I grew up in that church. And his whole demeanor just stopped. And he was like, are you serious? And he started to say something about, like, I'd love to talk to you more about it. And then my drill sergeant hollered from across the whole area. I had to do push-ups.
He saw what you did?
Yeah, I had to do push-ups for like 15, 20 minutes. But
did she have to do it with you, your battle buddy?
I don't remember. Cause
for not stopping you or something?
All I could think about while I was doing them was totally worth it, totally worth it,
right.
Totally worth it. But he was so dumbfounded. And as I was running to my drill sergeant, I was like, don't ever stop telling them. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah. That's how
But you know what I wonder? It's one thing to sit in a class and you knew of the group. I wonder how many people, because of the stress in the environment, they forget the name.
Oh, well, that's not a name. It's...
Right, and it's not even so much a name. I wonder, hopefully later on, some people were like, wait a minute.
Well, the problem is you get these kids, they go to basic, they go to AIT, let's say they're active duty, they get stationed like Korea or Hawaii or somewhere they're so far away from CONUS.
Yes.
And away from their families. And then their mom starts bugging them. Did you go to church?
Yeah.
You know, your father would want you to.
Why are you making her sound like she's from New Jersey?
I'm trying to make her sound like your mom.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Because that's what she would say.
Would have to be a Catholic church.
Robert, get your dog. That's what I think of.
Right. And we know just
because they're also the kinds of families that really pressure.
Yes. Yeah. Until
Italian,
you start going.
New Jersey people.
It wasn't Catholic, so that wasn't something they were happy about. Not just with NTCC, but before that, when I was in New Jersey. So. Oh yeah. Like, if they want you to go to church, they want you to go to the kind of church they want you to go to. I'm sure it's that way for most families. It may be, and we know the draw. I do from having been breach and servicemen's work over in the Philippines is that, I didn't feel lonely and far away. I was glad to be far away, and I didn't feel lonely. I had a lot of friends. But there are people who do, so they go in for the homemade meals and sitting around and being outside of the barracks, but
especially guys.
Yes, but by the time they start paying the monies and living in the home with the rules and their time being taken up and requirements.
It was like that drill sergeant said, it wasn't so much that they were giving their time to God. Right. He was just so concerned about how much the church was consuming their time.
Yes.
It wasn't this soldier was like, hey, y'all, I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to take leave today and go read the Bible. Cool.
Yeah.
But taking leave or doing something else or wearing themselves down to where they couldn't perform.
Right, and we've seen a lot of, I mean, even for myself, when I was in the Philippines and I had a TDY come up, I had to choose between Korea and Thailand. It was kind of decided for me, but I was getting pressure from the church, especially the preacher's wife, no, not to go at all. Isn't there any way you can get, so I've heard other...
Once your orders are cut,
that's it.
You better hope you get hurt.
Right. Like, I'm not myself, I'm not my own anymore. I'm not in a regular job where I can neglect the duties. And just because everyone was not a slacker loser in the military as they like to portray, is that why would you want to do that? But...
I mean, you've seen in my life.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't that I was a slacker loser as a kid.
Well, you had a desire to do it.
I did. Well, I always did. Yeah.
And you've performed well and moved up and made boards and gotten accolades and everything.
But you know,
been overseas to Kuwait during the pandemic. That was fun. But so now
that's fun, actually.
You were talking about that. We were discussing that back in the spring.
I think I told you about that years ago, and you were just like,
I probably forgot.
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until
coupled
May.
with it, we were actually discussing on and off for a couple weeks, I think. You know, I was glad you were opening up to me about, even if the negative feelings were like, hey, I blame you. I blame my dad. I blame you for all this agony. But I was just glad to be talking about it. And then when you mentioned the lost kids of NTCC, I was like, what is that? And
I don't know. For me, it's not agony. It's more just frustration. Well, personally, I've gotten over it, generally, I think.
Sometimes there's little things that
every now and then something will happen, and you throw a pillow across the room, and then you're done.
And it is different different people I've spoken to who have children. Recently, I had a discussion with someone last night who had a son grow up in the organization, and she felt like girls had it differently when they got out because they had never had to go look for a job. They had never done the things that now they were being faced with. You were
trained to.
Because we were planning for... You had a hope chest, and you had all these things that were going to be for your future as a preacher's wife.
Our last conference when I was 15, I mean, everybody just assumed I was going to Bible school when I turned 16.
Right.
And it's like, you really want, looking back at it now, you really want a 16-year-old girl to move from Virginia to Washington State by themselves.
Right.
And go to your school.
Right.
Like, I don't even have a high school diploma.
Right. Exactly.
Y'all told me I didn't need it, but still, how am I gonna get a job?
Yep.
I don't know, work at McDonald's, catch rides from people.
Right.
One of your people gonna teach me how to drive?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Is Tanya gonna teach me how to drive?
Boy, that's a loaded question.
I'm just saying,
yeah, I know. But
made no
sense.
sense.
What was it you brought up to me? And this was the first time I realized yes, I've talked about them on and off, and I reached out to different people prior to that just to check on them and see how they were doing through the years. But I hadn't, as far as I recall, I hadn't been doing anything with NTCC since...
What, 2007? Maybe 2008?
Yeah, the latest.
Maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit in 2008.
Yeah, that was probably the last time, maybe. But, so when I went on Facebook and found they live stream and all this, so I watched the episode. I watched the
this
episode.
This Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m.
Oh my. Uh, so you mentioned something about Keckle talking about the lost kids, and I didn't know who the lost kids were, and then I realized it made sense about who they were, and that touched me because I'd been with those kids through children's church for how many years, and so that bothered me. If they were being bothered, that bothered me. And when I saw his snarky, just kind of just writing them off.
Because the seed was planted in bad soil.
Yeah, exactly. So that was how this all began. It's all your fault.
That's fine.
It's fine, and it's been good because I've learned a lot from you about what life was like for you. Did I know about your journal entries before this time? It may be one of those things where you told me and I just didn't process it. I don't know. Or was it just recently that you said, "Hey, I wrote these things."
Oh no, I only just recently told you.
Right. So it's like opening up everything, and then once I started talking to people and just thinking about the military, and of course, we both do,
Well,
I think.
the journal entries, I think, came from, when we left, couldn't help but hear you and Daddy's conversation, see the stuff on FactNet. It just got me thinking about some of the things that I thought was just absurd.
Right.
And I always did, because not having made the decision to be in it.
Right. To be what?
Not to be in it.
Right. Keep it nice. Keep it nice. Having not made the decision to be in the group.
Yeah.
You're saying. Right. That was really difficult leaving.
Well, it's difficult leaving, and that's why I was always so pissed off at you and Daddy.
Right.
Well, mostly Daddy, because I felt like he's the one that made the decision, and that's why I ignored him for 2 months.
And what would you say is the main reason why you did? Like, you knew. Let me ask you this. I don't want to put a thought in your head.
So I knew
we
things
got
were
to
wrong.
Virginia.
I knew things were wrong.
Okay.
I saw everything that was going on, but because I was just coming to the point of succumbing to this is my life.
Yes.
I'm gonna be a preacher's wife. I'm gonna go to Bible school, whatever. I had started putting myself in that mindset, and so then when we left, I was like, what?
When you were with your friends, like I have notebook from the last conference we went to in Missouri. I believe that was fall 2005.
It was.
And so I wrote things about, took the girls over to this museum, and we won't mention last names, but friends, which you girls have a lot of.
Yeah.
And
well, especially we would write to each other. And
right. So now you're at a point where you're gonna. Did you girls talk about stuff like this together, like among yourselves?
Well, at that age, we talked about boys.
You're right.
We talked about.
But was it in a way like?
It was just assumed all of us were going to Bible school and we're going
Right.
to marry some dude.
Right.
Most likely, at least at that age, at least 7+ years older than us.
And before we moved to Virginia, we were living on campus, just catty corner to the Olsons, and we were close with the Keckles. You girls have both mentioned feeling like you were, the word used out on the street is groomed. I think that is a good word for it.
Oh, it was. You'd get, and it wasn't just the people that lived there. You get all these, not even the leaders' wives. Sometimes it was the leaders themselves. Sometimes it was people, I guess you could say, lower than that. You'd be like, oh, who are you interested? Did you notice that brother and so is here? was like, I'm 12. He's in Bible school.
Which is so weird because your daughter, my granddaughter, is 12, and I can't even imagine
Oh, yeah.
her thinking about getting married.
Now, like, as much as I loved Gail Olsen. I really did.
Yeah.
She had me and Rachel over there, almost every day. We would help her with restocking and cleaning their motorhome, helping her in her house,
Right.
helping her with her insulin and stuff.
Right.
She had a lot of opinions about the church.
Yeah.
A lot of things that she would say about the church, and even Joe, her husband. Me and Rachel just look at each other like, she's not praising all this stuff. What is happening?
Is there anything, I mean, I don't want us to be salacious here
No,
and just
I
say something to
remember-
say it. Like, do you remember anything in
It
particular?
was almost like every day. She'd get frustrated with something and she'd start going, you know what I can't stand about Pastor Davis? He just, never mind. You know, stuff like that. Or she'd, you know, her husband would come in and he didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It was more just, I don't know, he didn't take his shoes off or something. And so she would go off like on a tiny little rant. And then she'd be like, you know, but old Joe, I love him. I'm like, okay.
Well, she let down her guard, it seemed, with both you and Rachel.
Yeah, but she was one of the biggest pushers about what we were going to do with when it came to Bible school and getting married and I don't know, at the time it didn't quite bother me as much from her, although it did add to everything.
Right.
Simply because I assumed it was like, man, she's been in this church for how long? This is all she's heard.
Right.
Her own daughter. I mean, it's just natural for her at this point. I don't even know if she notices.
Right.
But she would take us to the grocery store. We always knew where all of her snacks were in case she, you know, had an issue with her diabetes.
Right.
I liked her. It was so weird. Being like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah. And especially, I would say, looking back on it, like, I didn't realize the extent to which it happened, and then I started to hear it from others your age and other
There's a
moms
lot of people on
of
that street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Bonko, too.
Yeah. And Bonko is just...
community.
Right. I really kind of look at it like
Davis's
a community of tenants, which, you know, I can't speak to.
It was considered a privilege if you got to live in any of those places.
Right. So Bonko was where Davis built his big home.
It was a mansion.
It was. It still is. It's still there. I think.
His carport where you pulled in for the little roundabout.
Yeah.
Is bigger than our apartment right now.
Right. It's a condo. It's not an apartment.
Same thing. Roach, palmetto bug. Condo, apartment.
Right,
Same
exactly.
thing.
This is true. Cannot argue with that. Right. Well, for people that don't know, Bonko was the name of the neighborhood. Davis had these homes built. So there were at least...
How was it called, Bonko?
It stood for something, I think. I don't know now. I think I knew at the time. But, I mean, it's easy to go on Google Earth and look and count how many homes there were. But what would you say, just off 10,
at the
12?
time, yeah, something like that. At least 12 at the time.
Right.
But a lot of our friends lived up there.
Right. So, what happened was, I think there was a point when we lived in Puyallup, it was right after 9/11.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then I think it was at the end of that year or the beginning of the next year when we moved. And what happened was, when Davis started building those houses up there, when people were moving in, I think someone asked him about, like who can move in. He's like, well, I'm not asking people. So then men started asking.
Yeah, and then Daddy was a teacher there.
Right.
So.
And we were in
I
one
assume
home that was one of the first homes there.
Yeah, like from what, the 80s?
Yeah, I think so.
That was a nice house.
Yeah, it was a good size. It was perfect. And we were able to be near everybody. The one draw, I think, to it was you didn't have to ask permission to fellowship with someone who lived there as well, right? For the kids, for sure.
Yeah, I mean...
But I think there was a limit on how many.
Even though you just went up to Bonko or came down to our neighborhood, you can't stop everybody's kids from coming out. Well, you'd have, what, like 15, 20 kids out there.
Yeah, that was a fun time. Now, those were, when I look back, it's like those are the times when, you have some good memories. It's not, I never want to paint it as, it was all crappy. It was all stinky, poo-poo.
It was when you lived outside of that area.
Yes.
That maybe you weren't as trusted as much.
Well, also, you weren't getting indoctrinated as much. So it started to...
It was just very prevalent when we lived up there. Yeah. All the time.
Right.
People would stop by and bring you something. And you'd be like, oh, no, you don't have to do that. And be like, oh, don't take my blessing. Don't steal my blessing or whatever. It's like, that was always weird to me. Or,
Or, what we would do sometimes? You're just reminding me of something. We started, it was a thing that started where you'd give someone a gift, and then you'd say to them, I'll pay the tithe on it. Like, I remember we did a Secret Santa one year for a lady and her kids. Her little boy had his hair, had been scalded off.
I remember him. I remember that. I do remember that situation.
Name. He was such a sweet little kid.
Hadn't his brother been like giving him a bath or a shower?
No, I don't know. They turned on the water in the shower and it was scalding hot.
I remember when we did that.
Oh, that poor kid. And so I think I wrote in the card that I've got the tithe on this because you paid on your increase on everything. I mean,
I used to hate being like 8 or 9 years old, and you'd get.
Oh, didn't you say you had a tithe jar or something?
$10-15 from your grandparents for Christmas. And you'd be like, well, you gotta pay your tithe. So what, $1? You want me to take an envelope and put $1 in there from an 8-year-old?
Well,
I'm trying to save for a bike. Like,
because my parents bikes.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. You had a bike.
I'm picking something random an 8-year-old would save for.
Right.
I had all my little jars laid out on my desk at each. If I got 50 cents, I broke the 50 cents up and portioned it out into each jar for what I was saving for.
I wonder how many kids do that now.
I don't know. But it wasn't really the credit card world we live in.
No Cash App. No, whatever else going on.
But no, they used to annoy me. And for me, having your birthday the same week as Christmas.
Yeah.
It's like, I had to pay twice on gifts this week. Really?
Yeah, I had to figure out the amount that I thought each gift was. And then we tithed on that gift. We tithed on the increase.
I remember, too, you'd have, like, certain people would show up to the house and pull in the driveway, which... that was looked at as like an moment if one of them showed up to your house.
You mean in Graham?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they just blow on the horn till you came outside.
Yeah. Verna Davis did that one time.
She did it. Cackle did it.
Yep.
Both Cackles did it.
Yes.
Both Davises did it.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot all about that.
Olsen I didn't mind because...
For her to walk up.
It was very difficult for her to walk.
Yes.
And half the time she would call.
Yes, I was just going to say. She would
say,
call
hey,
first.
I'm coming.
Right. Right, that's true. I forgot all about the horn blowing.
And then, you would be in the middle or something, or let's say your back's hurting that day, so then me and Rachel had to book it outside to the man of God and be like, yes, sir, what would you like?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Everything's about them and their persona versus what I always read in the Bible as ministers are the ones that you get out of the
Oh,
car
he
and
hated-
you walk up to the door.
Especially after he got that red SUV. What was that, a Suburban?
I don't remember. I know
Oh,
what you're
God,
talking
we would
about.
be outside playing, and as soon as we would see his truck coming, we'd just be like, let's go run over here. But sometimes he'd see us and lay on the horn. What are y'all doing? Riding our bikes?
Causing trouble. Looking for a husband, sir.
Yeah. Thought I'd ride my bike down onto one of the dorms and see whose vehicle is there.
Well, let's see. We're at like half an hour now of this, and
I told you I could keep going, but
Well,
you had
right.
to ask me some questions.
right. But also, I just wanted you to start talking today. The one thing I did want to cover before we move on to anything else was, when I wanted to start the podcast, it was about the afterlife and
Right.
keeping it positive. Now, interviews to me are positive because the one thing that helped me, and I think almost everyone else, is when they read the experiences of others or hear about it. Like, I can totally relate. Like that girl, quote, Mary, unquote, that was on the Bible scribe, who couldn't relate to that or have been there,
Well, I think today is more just, not petty stuff, but little things.
What do you mean today?
Well, I think, like what we've already talked about. Some of it's important, some of it's really not. I'm just talking.
Right.
But
But
you
see,
know,
this is the
times
thing.
when we lived in Pittsburgh, times when we lived in Virginia. And if you want to talk about after,
Right.
let's be real.
You mean after
After
we
the
got
church.
out?
For a
Yes.
good 5 years there,
Yes.
I was
Out of control?
Yeah.
Well, let's go back more because I do want to keep going all these little things. Here's the interesting thing to me, from having studied this and having had my own experience and watched you girls and countless other people, to hear Keckle in service, especially today, but other days, like, you're free to go. Is anybody forcing you to stay here? You
Yeah.
heard that today, right? And so,
it's
he-
been said since I was a kid.
right. And
Davis said it all the time.
right, exactly. No one's forcing you to stay here. And yet, the whole dynamic of a cult is that it does not smack you in the face when you walk through the door, because usually you've got something going on, and here they bring you in with the Bible. Hey, the Bible. Look, I'm saying verses
love.
from the Bible. Yes,
Because a lot of times people that don't even know what love is, so when they think they found it.
right, exactly. But it's very conditional, wouldn't you say?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, obviously no one's forced to be there. They're literally not. You're not handcuffed to a pew.
No.
But you are forced with ideas.
Exactly. That's what the chains are. That's what the things are that weigh you down. I can't leave this group without.
Oh, God. Me and Rachel lost everybody. That was a very lonely couple months before other people started leaving.
Right. Let's jump to that part, since this is an after thing, and we can fill in and flesh out the skeleton of life in the group, including, it's important to me to cover when we went to Pittsburgh, because so much happened then with where we lived, with our health, with work, with helpers, with everything. It was crazy. The weather, the money, everything.
Oh, yeah. No,
And
that was a
but
rough
let's jump ahead real quick, and we'll maybe end with this part is, what would you say from your point of view was the reason why we left? Like, you can say looking back now, and what did you think then?
Oh, well, obviously, looking back now,
You can see all the
I see.
reasons.
Yeah, that's given. At the time, I I know I didn't see it coming. I mean, you and Daddy would like argue and whatnot about stuff, but you guys always did that. Didn't seem any more normal or any more abnormal than usual. So when I remember, I just got out the shower. It was December 26th, 2005, and I was drying my hair, like head bent over, drying, when Daddy came in and said, "Hey, I need you and Rachel to come downstairs." And usually if I heard, "Hey, I need you to come downstairs," I'm like, "Oh man, what'd I do?" But I knew, because me and Rachel weren't getting along at the time, there probably wasn't anything we did together. So, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what to expect. And I come down and you're crying, but I'm not saying you're a crier, but then it was like, oh man, they're getting divorced. Like, I don't know where this came from, but that's what it is. And that's when you had the whole conversation. You guys couldn't represent the church anymore. And I was like, okay. I don't remember the whole conversation because I instantly just got really upset. And y'all said we were leaving, and it was like, well, how soon? And I was like, a week? I was like, what? Are you serious? A week? And I think part of the frustration too was, here we go again, moving again.
Right.
Like that, I think was my first initial reaction. Like, yeah, we literally just moved here. How long ago? Come on.
Yeah.
Always move.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hated it too.
I'm about to be 33, and I think we've moved to different places, like, in my life. And I know I've had different moves than you have. 29 times? That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot. And if you look at how many we're in...
I have 60, and I'm about as old as I am.
If you look...
Move a year.
Yeah, at how many were in the span of just a few years.
Yes.
And so then it was like, well, where are we going? Wait, why are we doing this? And that's when I started getting mad at Daddy. Because I already knew it was going to happen. The church was going to just completely disown us.
Why did you know that?
We always talked about it. I mean, I'd been in the big chapel. We sat at Graham for 4 or 5 years after I started going to the big chapel.
Right. Not the children's church anymore.
Right, once I turned 10.
Right.
I had to sit through all of it.
Right.
I'd sit outside. You know, when Daddy was teaching class and we lived in Graham, me and Rachel would walk over to the education building and we'd stand outside the hallway waiting for him to get done.
Right.
You could hear everyone else.
Yes.
You could hear the dumb stuff they said.
But what was it that made you know that inherently? What had you heard that made you think that you were going to lose,
There's nothing so much specific as over the years you see when other people leave what happens.
Right.
You see how the church talks about them when they leave.
Right.
It's kind of like if I were to ask you to pick a random service of Keckles where he's just nowhere near on a track for anything. Like, he's derailed 40 minutes ago.
Right.
Pick out one memorable statement. It'd kind of be hard.
Right.
But you would hear these things, and I'd hear it from Davis. You hear it from Keckle. You hear it from Olson. And
right.
You'd hear it from the, 1 or 2 random preachers that wanted to be like them.
Right.
And then people just talk about it.
Well, especially, I know when we lived in Puyallup, and we had gotten a call from the Lloyd Owens, who Mick and I were together initially in the Philippines.
And what did you and Daddy do?
I don't think we said many words, and then we hung up on them. Like, you're not a part of us anymore.
Plus, at this time, already all the FactNet stuff had started.
Right.
And in order at the time, the original FactNet, we used to have to go to Daddy's work.
That's right. And you reminded me, I think recently, I forgot that I used to go to the library.
Yeah, and me and Rachel had to tag along. You'd see the stuff. You'd hear the things.
Right.
You'd hear the opinions about those that left.
Right.
So I already knew. And I knew. I couldn't think of one friend that might still talk to me. Plus just all the relationships we had.
Right.
I mean, you're ostracized, especially as a kid as you get older. Unless you went to public school, you didn't have any other friends.
Well, now...
And living in Graham,
right,
you're just surrounded by church people.
right,
You have no outside
right,
friends.
right. That wasn't even a thing. Like, if you had done that, people who had done that through the years, they were asked. In fact, there was a point where Davis changed the babysitting rules for classes, saying he didn't want people leaving their kids with sinners.
Yeah.
And so
and
that's
why
how
we
it
had
was.
A ton of kids running around.
8
every
kids,
night.
right. Whatever the maximum was, it's what you had to do because there weren't enough ladies to be like,
At the
I
time,
can take 4. You're trying to help each other out.
At the time, I probably thought I had like 7 brothers and sisters of all different colors and sizes. And
Right.
ages.
But so now, once we left, had you been writing to any girls before you left? We left the church?
Oh, yeah. And even though we had phones, I mean, cell phones were... You still got charged.
Right.
Couldn't text without getting charged. Daddy, I think you guys maybe had some little track phone. You would lose massive amounts of money.
Right.
On phone calls. And
Yes.
so we wrote letters. Yeah, it was quite frequent. And, oh, God, I would have to say... When I say 10 to 15, you had pairs of siblings.
Yes. There
So-
were a lot of sisters.
Yeah. And when we left, you know, obviously we left Virginia early in the morning. I think it was Sunday, December.
It was. No, January 1st.
No, January 1st. I think it was a Sunday.
Yeah.
And it was a very long ride
Oh, yeah. That
to
was
Ohio.
hard. It was very hard.
Everyone was quiet.
It was good to have a place to go to where
Oh, yeah.
there was no one there. We had the run of the house and could kind of decompress and all a little bit.
I don't know. I think it made me angrier, but you know how I am.
Well,
Things make me
I
mad.
can't even imagine what it was like from your point of view.
But when we got there, I think after a day or so, I just wrote all of them. And all I said was, hey, just let you know, we changed our address. Here it is.
Right.
I didn't say anything because I didn't.
Right.
I wanted to see if it could keep going for a little while longer.
Yeah.
Even though I knew
Right.
Davis was going to, or
Yes.
somebody, they probably put it in a trumpet or something that these people were leaving. Here's a list of everyone.
Well, they've done a whole list before. I think
But there
in
was
2006 they did that.
There was no sign of, some of the friends that we had that did eventually leave. There was no sign of them leaving at the time.
Right. In fact, we had called as many people as we had numbers for. We called to say we just want to let you personally know that we're out and why. Some didn't want to hear it. Some were shocked and wanted to hear it. I think there was one lady who I worked with in children's church. She just hung up, and
Well, you had ones that,
he felt
They did.
responsible. He felt culpable for them still being in.
you had some that still kept writing. Eventually stopped. I think once they realized.
Right.
You have some that I still talk to now. I won't mention their names.
Right.
I think I can appreciate someone just not writing me back, especially when I know what the situation is.
Yes.
But it was that, I don't remember if it was like a month or 2 months later, we found out that somebody I'd written to, like I said, I'm not going to name certain names.
Right.
It was a fellowship meeting, and their dad stood up in front of everyone to make a show.
So fellowship meaning like
Well, because
where?
they were in
Graham,
in another state.
Oh,
they had
okay.
a church in another
Oh,
state.
like the regular monthly fellowship meeting. I see.
And yeah, he ripped it up, and I wasn't so much sad as I was just.
Did he
angry.
stand up and say, "This is a letter to my daughter from the Pelfrey girls," or one
More
of the Pelfrey girls?
I don't remember. That was.
And made a show of it, or what?
Mom,
so weird.
like you said, it was almost 20 years ago. I don't remember the exact words.
Right.
I really don't. Because I think once I heard it, because it was somebody that had been there that was still talking to us.
Ah, gotcha.
And Daddy sat down with me and just was like, hey, in case you're wondering why so-and-so hasn't written you back.
Oh, I see.
This is why.
Gotcha.
But I was, you know how I get.
That had to hurt.
I don't know if it hurt so much as...
here's the point.
I had violent thoughts.
Right. But what had you written in the letter?
Just
Were you saying...
No, it was the same thing I wrote to everybody. I pretty much wrote the same thing. It's just wanted to let you know we moved. This is our new address.
Right.
It was like one page, super short.
And knowing you, it probably... I could see you writing about like being in Ohio and during a snowstorm there was thunder and lightning or something.
No, I think that some people I did write that. Like,
did you?
We had a blizzard the other day and there was thunder and lightning. Like, I didn't even know that could happen.
Right.
Like, it's really cold here.
Right. But nothing.
January.
But you didn't write anything, and I
didn't mention a single thing about the church.
Right.
I didn't even want to ask how their parents were
Right.
because I didn't want anyone to think I was
Any
fishing
pressure.
for you.
Right.
You and Daddy. I wasn't fishing for anything.
Right.
What I was going for was showing that I know you're going to find out eventually we're not still in the church.
Yes.
But I want to show you, like, you can still be normal.
Right.
Not necessarily you, but me. Like, I can still be normal. I can still be myself.
I'm still me. Yes. Yeah, but that clearly is not acceptable. I don't know what it is now. I have no idea.
Well, it's kind of hard to maintain that level now simply because of social media and phones and...
Right.
God, you can...
Yeah, back
find
when,
anybody anywhere.
even when FactNet started, I spoke to somebody recently on the
phone. We used to have to go to Daddy's work to use his work computer for the internet that was dial-up.
Yes. Right, so until you said that I remembered, I used to go to the one.
Oh, God, we would get in that little gray truck. What was it, a Chevy? And it had the two seats in the back that faced each other. And all four of us would get in that thing, and me and Rachel would be back there like our butts hurting and everything. Like, we're going back there again. Another night. What else have they got to say?
Oh, you're talking about while we were still in.
Yeah, while we were still in.
Right, because we and that is something that I am going to probably, maybe even tonight, we'll see. Maybe not till tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. Is start sharing the beginnings of FactNet and how we were asked to say positive things. And, you were there in that service when the hot people left.
It was my 13th birthday.
That's terrible.
It was my 13th birthday. I want to say it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, which you don't normally have church on, but it was like special services that week for Christmas.
Oh, because most people the kids were off school or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't remember. But, I remember we had a little get-together with, like, some of the kids from either Bonko or the area or whatnot. But we had to cut it short because we all had to get ready for church. I think they all got ready there and then at our place, and we dropped them off at their parents at church.
That sounds familiar.
And I remember exactly where I was sitting. I could probably find that pew today. And I just remember Davis was preaching, and who knows what he was preaching about. I wanted more cake. And so
He hates cake.
I wanted cake.
Oh, you wanted more cake.
Yeah. It was my birthday. Like,
it's true.
I have to go to church on my birthday. Like, I was in the middle of having, playing games with my friends.
Yep.
That was more fun. And so I was just sitting there, and then all of a sudden I just heard this yelling behind me. You know, people yell it all the time in church. So I was like, bro, you're right behind me. Why you gotta be so loud? I mean, come on.
I was on the other side of the church.
Yeah, I was sitting with Daddy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it just sounded aggressive. And I was like, do I look behind me? Like, where is this person?
Yeah, that was a
Who is
creepy
it?
night.
And when they started talking, I realized it was Virgo. Because what was he, like, Jamaican or something?
I think so. I forget if he was.
He was, like, Caribbean. I know that. So he had an accent. And I remember I was just sitting there like, wait a second. Because I was trying to pick out through his accent what he was talking about. And that's when Davis yelled something back. And I was like, there's finna be a fight. So I turned around and Virgo's like right behind me. And I look up and he's like pointing and yelling and talking about how, oh God, he was just yelling. Like I said, I was picking up certain words because...
Well, it threw us, I think it threw everyone off. So
Yeah.
the shock of it, you're like, what's happening?
And because he was so angry, his accent got thicker.
Yeah.
So there's certain words I was
Why
picking
don't
up.
I remember him having an accent? It's going to bug me now, but anyway, go ahead.
And I remember he did.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, but I do remember they did a little article about him and the trumpet years before that.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, and I think they said he was Jamaican.
Ah, interesting.
Oh, I used to read them.
Yeah. So
he was just like going on about how there's a bunch of people that can't stand to be in this church anymore because of Davis, and he's like such a terrible person. And him and his wife, I don't think she was sitting next to him. That I don't remember.
probably not at that time.
Yeah, men didn't really sit with women, even their own wives.
Yeah.
But then several other people got up. I'm just looking around like, what is happening right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it kind of did make my birthday a little better because I was like, okay.
Drama.
It was. It was like,
For a kid, I'm sure. It's like not the normal.
it was kind of like, you know, now I'm so excited about the new season of Kitchen Nightmares. It's been like 10 years. Like, what? It's the same feeling. Like, what is happening?
What I have a yawn. I have to cut that out. And then, wasn't it that next year, like that next spring?
Yes.
Wasn't
we had
there
a conference.
There was a pastor's conference. And we had the Scrivens with us.
Stayed with us,
Right.
because they used to live next door to us.
Right.
And then they went wherever they went, and so for the pastor's conference, they came, stayed with us, because they stayed in you and Daddy's room.
Right.
And I remember you decked it all out because you had that fruit wood couch and everything, so it looked really nice. And we just had fun with them. But then church services were just off the chain.
I don't remember being in that service.
You did a lot of children's church.
Yes.
You did so much of it. I couldn't possibly remember.
Right. Right.
Most of the time I was sitting with Daddy, or we would just sit with another sister and her kids. Just 'cause.
When they started having nights and nights of services, then that's what had to happen. We had to pull rotations and do it more often.
Yeah. But no. Every service it was just about...
But what do you recall, I mean, just real quick, about what you were there when George Jordan got up?
Yeah. Well, no, he didn't necessarily get up. He was preaching that night.
He was preaching, right.
He was preaching that night. He's just one of those people that also doesn't always stay on track.
Right.
Goes blah, 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 blah everywhere. And it wasn't even the first night, so probably could have been the second or the third night, and by then I was just not paying attention. Because it was the same. Everybody was saying the same things over and over again, how great this church was. You know,
right, everybody was doing damage control.
They were. So it was like...
I'm trying to remember what month the
how
conference
many more people
was.
do you... I want to say it was like March or April. I remember it was chilly.
Okay, because then right after that was when...
Maybe February.
We heard about FactNet.
No,
So
but George
all
Jordan
these things were happening one after the other.
Yeah, George Jordan, he got up and he was going on and on about the quote-unquote men of God, mostly Davis. And he just started talking about how he's the first, like, factually, not even I feel this way.
Right.
He's first up before God, this, that, and the other day.
We were taught that by Olson and Keckle in classes.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the first time I heard it. Or reference to it, but the way he said it so factually and just went on and on about it. He's one of the apostles and this and that. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm pretty sure that's not what the Bible says. Like, it doesn't even say anywhere that, does it? That somebody's going to come down in an earthly form and be part of that when they get to heaven? Like, pretty sure the Bible would have said that.
Right, because he mentioned him being one of the 4 and 20 elders. Book of Revelation.
And Davis, sitting up there in his little gold-plated throne behind him. Which, why would you want to look at the back of a preacher whole service anyway? I don't know.
Well, that's not what he's looking at. He's looking at faces in the crowd.
I know this.
All right.
I knew what it was because he would sit there the whole time looking at faces in the crowd. Sometimes you'd be sitting there and you'd just be like this, with your head on your chin, and you just look over at him and I think he's looking at me. Maybe I should sit up. And then he'd look away and I was like, did he look away because he did see me and I corrected myself? Or did he not see me and I can go back to doing it?
Can you imagine everybody and all the thoughts going through their heads as he sat and just stared out?
But that's what he did. It was like,
maybe he
wasn't listening.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
But I definitely heard that part because once he started changing up what he was saying, it was not what everyone else had been saying. I was dumbfounded. And then when no one corrected it, and then you got a bunch of amens because they gotta say it.
Right. It's that nervous thing. It's sort of like when Keckle said, I love my cult. You're like,
amen.
What? Huh?
Do I hear an amen?
Yeah.
Amen and amen.
Right. Double amen. All right, so we're getting to where I'm watching the time.
I want somebody to say one day amen or amen.
Or amen.
Just
to be different. So what we were talking about the other day was, okay, so we're going to cover other things and probably some of your journal entries as we go on. Those can be the main topics at the time. But also, when we were out in the different churches like Newport News and when we first went to Pittsburgh, what occurred there. But the positive thing is we were talking and the fact that you have all of this medical experience, right? And what's your physical therapy status? You've studied it.
Yeah. I had a certificate once. Pretty sure I probably should have renewed it. But I also have pretty extensive fitness training.
Right. Between the two of us, in talking to people who have gotten
I'm working on one of my certificates now for that.
Are you?
Yeah.
For which one? What's it going to be for?
Oh, several different things.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, we want to talk about, and I've talked to other people that feel like this is a good idea, is to, one of the things when you first get out is you're very disoriented. You have no idea what's what. And I think people need to step back and maybe take time and study things and figure it out for themselves, or just reconnect with family and friends, figure out their belief system, but also get interested, involved in something, to get some friends, not stay home, alone all the time.
Well, to some degree, yes, but once you first leave the church,
when you first leave, you have to
figure out what kind of friends you need to be around.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's like a scary world when you get out. Not scary, frightful, but you just don't know how to navigate it. Oh,
yeah, you might become friends with the crackhead on the corner, But that's not a good influence in your life.
No, very, very much not.
Just because you still feel like you have to talk to everybody. And
Right, that's true. But we want to talk about cultivating interests, things that you think you might like, and finding friends that way. But also then, I think our health suffers when we're in groups like that, and afterwards too, depending on how your recovery goes, right?
Look at the way Davis used to berate, especially women.
Oh my goodness.
But you weren't allowed to really do any exercise. Like maybe you get permission for like 2-3 sisters to go
walking, right?
Twice a day. But
Well, you didn't have the time. Your
that's what
time
I'm saying.
was not your own. Davis would pontificate in classes about whatever crazy fad diet he was on. One time it's Atkins, so one time it's no sugar, then it's no carbs and all fats, and then everybody starts doing that, and their bodies start getting whipped around. They don't realize that there's stress levels and things to take into account. They can't even control that.
I bet you half the overweight people there is from stress.
Yes, high cortisol levels and all
Yeah.
that. Yep. And so we want to eventually. Diana and I are shooting for maybe the first of the year is getting together. The proper setup and everything to do some classes so that you can feel like, all right, maybe I don't want to go out in public. You can start just being engaged with something like that from your home. So all this stuff will be forthcoming. I also have another person I'll be interviewing this week, and she'll have something to say about an idea. I don't want to say it ahead of talking with her. So we have things coming up. We have to figure everything out, like platforms for groups, for people to feel like, I want to use the word safe. I just mean safe from the eyes of those in NTCC who will scout out and maybe, report on things, because we know tattletaling is a big part of the manipulation there and all coercion. So stay tuned for that. And otherwise, we're going to end this right now. As you can tell, it's not scripted. Never will be. We did not do anything but talk about, I'm going to intro it, and then we're going to go from there. So, hopefully, as we go on and we start delving into things like NTCC going for the military, and what it's like to be a second generation NTCC-er, such as Diana, and then how to press on and recover.
I love being out.
Yeah, for real. But otherwise, we'll say goodnight. Say goodnight?
Yeah, good
You're a
night.
good girl. Say goodnight. Okay.